Walk around a little bit. Turn on the pressure. Well, I guess Robert gets to move back forth through a couple different spots. You're going to do the sea walk.
Check, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Pocket or something.
Okay.
I mean, for the most part, it was pretty amicable. We didn't fuss over everything, and that was what I told him there at the end.
Mental capacity to. It was.
Oh, that's pretty good. Check, and she had one going from, just for emergencies, going from Tulsa to Northeastern. And hers was shady.
What was?
Shady lady.
My first wife.
That's what I had said. I figured we would have, had it not been the way it was, I think we would have been, and I would top. OCO, welcome to the 16th Annual Cherokee Holiday Art Show. I'm Feather Smith.
And I'm Robert Lewis. We're hoping to be able to bring some interviews, some interesting art to show you today, and also bring some artists for you to look at too.
All right. Our first artist is going to be Brian Waytula. Brian?
Yay! Out there, there's a massive amount of applause. So hopefully at your home, you can applaud while you're looking at home. All right. First of all, let's tell everybody your name, where you're from.
My name is Brian Waytula. I was born here in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. I'm from Sapulpa. I live in Sand Springs now.
Live in Sand Springs now. What type of artwork do you do?
Anything I can get my hands on. Being a former teacher, I had to know, how to throw on the wheel, clay, charcoal, a lot of the classical mediums, colored pencil, spray paint, graphic design. So really I can do anything I want and just kind of have fun with whatever medium I'm in.
Oh, is there one that you're particularly interested in, or just something that hits your fancy that morning?
Yeah, I have a sketchbook with just a bunch of ideas in it, things I might be interested in, stories, and then I just try and figure out what kind of medium fits that story or what I want to work in. I'm kind of known for my colored pencils, making them look like paintings, so I really like working in those. But really just anything I want to have fun in.
Have you always started with artwork, like when you were a young child, just kept on doing it? Because most children start with art, but eventually they stop.
Yeah, my grandmother and my mom, are Cherokee treasures and basket weavers. And obviously we were taught how to gather honeysuckle, buckbrush, river cane, set dyes, things like that. My baskets tend to turn out lopsided. So they had to put rocks in it to keep them up and nice. So they were my grandmother was like, well, let's give them some pencils or crayons and save some reed for us.
Or you could tell somebody if you lean head this way, it looks straight that way.
It's an abstract basket. but yeah, that's kind of how I got started, was working at a young age with the 2Ds, learning our traditional basket patterns and how those are made traditionally, but just moved into more of the 2D arts.
Oh, wonderful. Seeing all that and growing up with traditional arts like basketry, inspiration comes from those areas?
Yeah, I wish I would have been a little bit more conscious of what I was experiencing when I was younger, when my grandmother was still alive, and seeing, just being able to maybe study her a little bit more, and just watching how her mom and
your grandmother was a Cherokee National Treasure too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But just watching how things were made and harvested and the tools that they were used for back then. And then when I'm getting into my artwork now and I'm working on something, telling stories through my artwork, I think back to those memories when I was a kid and seeing, just growing up in Tahlequah and those kind of things.
Well, let's tell us a little bit about your art piece. Beautiful. The graphic we got sitting right over here.
Thank you.
Why don't you give us some?
Yeah. So
where did it come from? Inspiration for this piece?
Well, and most artists were all, it started out long ago where artists were more historians. We documented history. We would draw imagery of what was happening before photography, and I want to be able to take people I'm interested in. Gosh, I can't remember the photographer's name right off. Edward Curtis. Photographs of a lot of Native American histories back when they were moving west, documented, and I want to tell the stories of people that I know now. So, we did a portrait of you and told your story, the storyteller, and my friend Jake Tiger, who is Seminal. He is a traditions keeper, educator, educating natives and non-natives, about the Oklahoma Seminole tribe, their traditions and everything. And
I see an awful lot of work and detail in this piece.
Yes.
How much time? Normally, artists always say, how much time does it take to put it
I get asked that a lot, and I lose track. I'll start, and when I get to about 15 hours, it just blurs. I forget. But a lot of hours, a lot of detail. Working with my Prismacolors, I was introduced to Prismacolors by my high school teacher when I was 16. And I've just been working with them since 1996 and just kind of developing a method of laying them down, overlays, what kind of mat board works best, bringing out colors, certain colors, skin tones, things like that, and just kind of developing that as I go.
What is the title of this piece?
This one is called Son of the Seminole. I kind of titled that around Jake's experience growing up in the Seminole Nation, and just what he has learned and what he continues to try and pass on to younger generations and educate other people who may not be familiar with Oklahoma history or the removal acts from their homelands, and how we came to even be here in Tahlequah. So that's kind of what I have in my artwork description in this piece.
Yeah, that's a wonderful depiction of history, because when I go to area schools and communities, most children think we all wore buckskin or rode horses.
Yeah, or everyone had a war bonnet.
Yeah,
It's like,
war bonnet.
not this tribe, but you know.
And so this is a wonderful example of a historical context for different tribes.
Thank you.
Is there a particular story behind this piece? Is it just inspiration from his ancestry?
Yeah, we actually went into that and wanted to set more of a portrait up of how they were taken long ago. Like Edward Curtis, he would have them posed and kind of positioned for his cameras, and that's kind of what we went in with this specific composition in mind.
Now, do you work from photographs? Take photographs?
I went to Seminole, Oklahoma, and we sat down. And recently, when I did your portrait, and when I did Rex's portrait recently, I like to go and photograph now with the people that I admire. That have been doing things that may not get a lot of not attention, but a lot of people don't know about them. And just what he's done, I want people to be able to, one, enjoy the artwork itself, but then also want to know more about that person. Where's he from? What does he do? Is this a real person, or did you just make him up? Or what's his story? So.
Okay, so you want to relate that to a lot of art historians throughout the years will sometimes come up with their own viewpoint of what an art is or what the artist was thinking. This is your chance now to tell the people what your viewpoint is about this one particular piece.
Okay. Well,
I love the woven pattern you have around the sash.
Yeah, and like Native Americans, different tribes, we've all got our own unique, dress, or even the tools that we use and things that we use in our culture and tradition, even the weaponry, or even just everyday items that we use. So. Like you said, getting back to where all the kids thought that, or what their idea was, that we all lived in teepees, or we all wore war bonnets, or every tribe had beadwork. Just to kind of show people, just this is the Seminole dress, and how time period, and
it's different aspects of culture for each one.
Right. So that's what I try and do in my charcoals, colored pencils, any of my graphic design work, and try to tell the story of people that I'm friends with that I want people to know about than a lot of the ones that we've already seen throughout the years in the history books and everything.
I see. Now, you said you're a teacher, teachers inspiring students. Do you have any kind of advice for artists? Because at one time we were both that young artists wanting to go out there and figure out what to do. Do you have anything you would like to advise anybody getting started?
Just, experiment in anything that you can, all kinds of mediums. It took me until I was 16 or 17 before I found an interest in really trying to perfect, or just do as best as I could in Prismacolors. And then I started as I was getting into be, in my early 30s, we'll say. Experimenting with stencils, cutting my own stencils, and then working kind of a little bit like Shepard Fairey, who I started to learn more about, and spray paint and different layers and mixed media. So just always keep experimenting in different mediums, and have fun, because it's nice when I'll work, say 100 hours on this, when I can take a break and work loose and spray paint, and then go to a charcoal and do something a little bit different, or sketch, or then go to the computer and graphic design. But definitely just keep experimenting with different mediums.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Brian, for coming down today and sharing part of your artwork with us. There we go. We could do that too. I thought I heard him. Now I'm going to turn it over to Feather Smith. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you. What else?
So our Cherokee Holiday Art Show comprises of 12 different categories. 3 of those categories are set aside specifically for our youth. We have our youth broken up by ages. So we start out here with youth ages 1 through 8. Then we move into youth ages 9 through 13, and last are youth ages 14 through 18. It's kind of comprised as a way of making this a slightly modeled off of the adult categories. And so in each age category, we have a first place, a second place, and an honorable mention. Plus our judges choose their 2 favorite pieces. Our chief came in, and our deputy chief and our speaker all came in and also chose their favorite pieces for the youth pieces. As Brian was talking, oftentimes with our youth, what we're really wanting to see is them try out a variety of mediums. And so we will see all different types of varieties as we come through and look at these today. We have gourd work here. We've got paintings, we have photography, we have some diverse artwork and some 3D artwork. Our kids work really, really hard at this, and so we're always encouraging, wanting to see our next generation of artists who are going to come up. Many of these children will start out in these youth ages. We will see them continue to enter year after year. We'll watch their artwork advance. And then as they get older, oftentimes they end up choosing a medium once they get to about their teenage years. And we will see that actually start moving over into some of the adult categories. Starting out with our youth ages 1 through 8, the piece Rainbow by Finley Williams took first place. The piece, The School Classroom by Penelope Collis, took the honorable mention. And down here we've got Austin Murphy, who took second place with Rattle the Stars. Our judge's choice was Sidonella, or Family, by Caden Murphy. Our speaker's choice was Spirit and Lucky by Reese Doyle. And then for our ages 9 through 13 youth, first place was Facing the Future by Abigail Doyle. We have second place by Caden Murphy, Jogadu Nada, or 13 Moon. We have our honorable mention by Grace Thomas, which is 200 Years Strong. We have our next judge's choice over here for our youth was The Great Spirits Canvas by Christopher Stafford. We have another judge's choice by Ian Stafford, Warhead. And then in our youth ages 14 through 18, our first place is actually over here in the middle, and that was by Anita Mitchell. This is Phoenix. Second place is The Great Warrior by Caleb Stafford. And our honorable mention is our last piece over here, Out of the Darkness by Anita Mitchell. All right, we'll take it back to you, Robert.
Hello, we're back again. Okay, now, tell us your name and tell us where you're from.
I'm Ron Mitchell, and I live in Park Hill, just south of Tahlequah here.
Oh, that's not too far from here, is it?
No, hop, skip, and a jump.
Did you walk over here? It's kind of hot.
No, I definitely rode.
Well, what type of artwork do you do?
Well, I do multiple medias. Primarily, I've started out in pen and ink drawing. I've added, do acrylic and gouache paintings in the traditional flat style. And I also have done some metal sculpture over the years.
Oh, is that cumbersome, heavy, working with the metal sculptures? How large are your pieces?
The largest piece I did was about 6.5, 7 foot tall and about 12 foot wide. It's over in the new Cherokee Clinic there. Oh, it's a kind of taken off of the old traditional ledger style. Mm-hmm. I did some large canvases with the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and then put some relief sculpture out of metal in front of it. And it's on, I think, the 3rd floor over there.
Wonderful. That's an impressive sized piece. How'd you get started?
Well, I've always been interested in art, but when I was growing up, everybody kept telling me you can't make a living as an artist.
That's true.
Be an architect, be a draftsman. So I followed that route for a little ways and ended up being an aerospace tech illustrator. And eventually I ended up in Oklahoma City working at the head of their planning department. And the Festival of the Arts was set up out there in 1971. And I looked out the window, and I swear I hate hearing this when I hear people say it, but I said it. I can do that. And later that year, I did my first art show. And like a lot of first things, it didn't work out real well. But it challenged me, and from that day on, I've been working at it for 50 years now.
Yeah, and being an illustrator, you're given a job, and usually you do pieces, and sometimes they picked a piece that you don't want to work on. So
there was most of it was technical work. It was during the Vietnam period. A lot of it was aerospace technology, and my specialty was taking a set of blueprints and drawing an exploded view of the pen and ink. So you would spend hours and hours just on something very technical, and sometimes just a transistor. It's ridiculous, some of the things we had to draw, but, you know, we got paid for it.
Yeah. What inspires you? Does it dreams or just images or stories, something along those lines?
Most of my work, I try to base it on our Cherokee history and stories. And of course, I didn't start out that way. I started out doing Victorian houses. And as the years went by, I wanted to get back to something that was closer to my heritage. And in the mid-'80s, I decided to start doing Native American artwork. And I had to learn our stories.
Yeah.
And I predominantly did things in pen and ink drawing. I realized I was going to have to do color eventually, and I'm red-green colorblind. So when I look at nature, I don't always see all the colors. So I had my friends describe the sunsets to me at 10% intervals to tell me what the colors were in the sky. And over the years, I did learn to do a pretty good sky.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about your piece here. What's the title of it?
The title is A Time of Myths and Legends.
And I see a number of dancers.
Yes.
It's like silhouettes. Now, I know you work with some of your sculptures. They have almost like a silhouette look to it. Is that what you're achieving with your painting?
The silhouettes actually started as another technical challenge. I wanted to try to create in a silhouette the same depth, perspective, movement that you have in a regular painting or drawing, but keep it simple and apply it down to its bare elements, almost an oriental concept of approaching the thing. And the technique that I finally worked out is I put a foreground, a middle ground, and a background in it, and that helps create depth. All my silhouettes have rocks or something in the foreground. That way, when our eye picks it up, if it's a foreground, then the silhouettes, in real life, you wouldn't see those rocks because they'd be in silhouettes, but sometimes you got to break the rules to make things work.
You always got to break the rules as an artist. Now, I noticed some of the silhouettes, you have this wonderful uktan up here with the hand and eye, snake, serpent. But some of the silhouettes seem to mimic those shell gorget designs. All
the people and the dancers here are takeoffs or inspired from the gorgets from the mound builders period, particularly the spiral mounds here in Oklahoma. Each dancer, I tried to create the movement and everything. Also, I've got 7 dancers. For each one of the 7 clans. Right. So is that the story behind the piece? That's the story behind it, was to try to reach back into time to show the early period of our people's history and everything. And instead of using the moon in the background, I decided to take one of the gorgets and use it there. That's a wonderful piece. Thank you. Who inspired you to be an artist? Did you have somebody who pushed you along when you were younger? No, it was all self-motivation. Everybody, like I said, when I was younger, they were discouraging me to be an artist. You're going to starve. You're not going to eat. Yeah. My dad was a retired Army, and then he was on the police department. So, you know, he came from that Depression area, and he never could quite grasp the idea of being a self-employed artist. And finally, in the, I think it was around 79 or 1980, I took him out on the road with me for 2 weeks. When we got back home, he went, "That's a lot of work for no more than you're making." But he never said anything bad about art after that.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. But sometimes the joy is just the piece itself that you're working on.
Oh, and just completing the piece, when you get this abstract idea of what you want to do, that's reward enough a lot of times. I mean, of course, we got to have money to to pay the bills. But
That's true. And it inspires somebody else as well. What would you say to any other inspiring artists? Somebody wants to be a sculptor or somebody's just now getting started out?
Well, over the 50 years that I've been doing shows, numerous times I've had young artists come into the booth, and I've always taken time away from sales or anything to talk to them about what they're doing. I always encourage them, and I always tell their parents, if they're there, I tell them, I says, and if you really want to support your health, buy the best art supplies you can afford.
Yeah.
Because I started out with working with those cheap little pan watercolors on newsprint.
Yeah.
And when I finally discovered real paint brushes and illustration board, it made all the difference in the world.
There's nothing more depressing to be painting something and watch the paint flake off about 2 or 3 days later and fall apart. But Ron, thank you so much. We're inspired by your piece. Congratulations on your win.
Well, thank you very much, and it's been a joy talking to you.
You're welcome. We're going to turn it back over to Feather Smith.
Now, our 9 adult categories are pottery, paintings, drawings and graphics, photography, sculpture, baskets, textiles and weaving, diverse arts, and jewelry. As we walk through the show today, you'll see that we have each of our pieces from our categories kind of mixed in together. We're really going to focus on some of our bigger 3D art pieces right now. Kind of starting out right here, this is a lovely piece that was done by Renee Hoover. It's called a woodland sewing basket. And you can see that she has some details inside the basket that are actually meant for holding the sewing pins. She adds a lot of details to the outside of her baskets. And of course, it's a very large piece, so that's part of the reason that we have it kind of set out here among some of our other pieces, such as our sculptures. We have different types of sculpture, which can really range from anything such as pottery. Sometimes we'll actually see pipes that are put into sculptures, which will have a variety of carving put into them, some stonework put into them. And then we have a piece over here by Joyce Lyle. This is her first year being featured in the Cherokee Holiday Art Show. She had 2 pieces. This is Peaceful Moments, and it took 2nd place in our sculpture division. And then we have our first place piece by Ramona Lossie is up here. It is a full river cane basket. It has been made using all natural materials. They split the river cane themselves. This is a single wall basket, meaning that it was started on the bottom. She wove up the walls to create the wall and then finished it at the rim by lashing it along the top. She's also made this a sort of a bag basket. It would be something that would be used for carrying. And this is called Grandfather Singing in the Mountains. And that took 1st place for basketry. She also took our 2nd place for basketry, Ramona Lossie, with her other piece over here, which is Peace, or it's a ceremonial basket. And this is actually a double wall basket. So in this case, she would have started by weaving the base. She would have wove up that first wall, and at the top, it flips, completely weaves back down the sides, and then at the bottom, all of those pieces weave in and out of themselves. So you almost can't tell where a double wall basket begins and where it ends. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work. Then we have some more sculpture pieces over here. We have The Dance by Jennifer Gamel. And you can see that this piece is actually done out of copper and some stonework. But again, we see a variety of mediums. So next to it, we have The Spirit of Buffalo Brother by Ray A. Mccoy. And he has done a club here that appears to have been done by carving. And this is actually in our diverse arts division. And then our last piece over here is another basket, and this one has been made by Burl Ford. It's Nature Provides, and he has actually blended some of the different types of styles. So oftentimes when we see these split pieces of material, we call this a flat reed basket because it would be made from things like split pieces of river cane or split pieces of wood. And then in our other style of baskets, we see what we call round reed, which is often made from viney types materials. He has combined the two. He's using split pieces of wood along with some of those viney materials and combining our 2 basket styles. And that's sort of we start seeing blending of of the different categories. We start seeing blending of the artwork. But he's also still using completely traditional materials here, where he has used traditional materials and traditional dyes to create these baskets. All right, I think we can take it back to Robert now.
All right. Thank you, Feather. Now, we're right here with this wonderful artist. Tell everybody your name, where you're from.
My name is Crystal Hanna, and I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay. And this is your piece. It's a gorgeous piece. Do you primarily work with just pottery?
Yes, I've tried other mediums, but pottery is like what I've stuck with and what I learned years ago from Anna Mitchell, my mentor.
I love Anna Mitchell.
Yeah, Anna was a treasure, and she was certainly a treasure to me as well. So she was a great influence on my adult life.
Yeah, and she taught a number of students. I have set a number of workshops with her as well. Tell me a little bit about your piece here.
Well, I'm obviously a contemporary potter, but I love traditional work, and which is what I learned from Anna. Even though I like to work in maybe some commercial clays, I'm like kind of expanding myself. But so what I learned from Anna, was we hand-dyed the clay, processed it, cold formed, and studied the designs from what she called the early woodland or Mississippian time period. So the research never grows old for me. So in this pot, I actually called it the Black Drink Cauldron.
Oh.
So in the ancient times, the tribes from the southeastern woodlands tribes, they had a purification ceremony.
And it involved a black drink.
The yapon,
Yes.
the poly was very heavily caffeinated. And so I was thinking, well, what could I name this piece? Because that's not my favorite thing to name pieces. But it was like, yeah, I think that could have held some of that black drink.
Now, did you go out and gather the clay yourself for this one piece?
Yes, it is traditional, hand-done clay, hand-processed, coil-formed, and wood-fired. And my blackening actually comes from like oak leaves. It's in a second firing. It's called reduction firing. And then the only thing I actually do after firing is etching. And it's just called crosshatch etching.
Yes.
So you scratch through the carbon basically to make a contrast design.
Now, for
There's-
those, sorry.
there's still so many things that I'm learning. And that's kind of my motto, never stop learning.
That's true. Now, for those who don't know anything about coil pieces, did you start with the bottom with a flat piece of clay?
Actually, I started in like a small bowl, so that as I built the piece up, it would hold the shape, so the bottom shape. And then after that, the coils are like long ropes of clay, and I usually just do one time around. So that's how I made this one.
Okay. Now, you talked about the cross hatching. That's on the design here, and this is based on Southeastern design. I'm interested in the white form. Is that clay? Is that slip?
Well, I originally started out on this piece with some colored slip, but when I fired it and blackened it, I didn't like it. So now that I'm trying to be more creative, I did add some commercial color to it on the top part to enhance it. I thought it looked better. So.
It almost reminds me of some of the squash pottery, like the ones based upon platforms, like Anna Mitchell had done.
Yeah, that was kind of her signature pieces to do the squash pot. So this was just, the Cherokee and all those southeastern tribes, they actually made huge vessels. So while I'm not that adept in making those big vessels, I do try them every once in a while, but I actually like mid-size, like maybe 6 inches by 8 inches tall. So, but
Yes, and they would dig huge
and the
furrows
reason
into the ground.
I hate making the big ones because I cry if they break during the firing,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that happens a lot with
Yes.
traditional firings.
Some people don't realize how many instances or chances a pottery can crack and break throughout
That's
the
true.
whole time you're working
That's
on it.
true.
Oh, wow. But it's beautiful. You see that the darkening here, did you smoke, what they call smoking the pot?
Right, in the reduction firing. So I build a fire and I with wood, and then I fire it so that it goes from ceramic, obviously, to permanent goes, I'm sorry, let me do that again. I hope you can edit this. It goes from clay to ceramic. So it's a chemical change. But if I want to blacken it, I still have to use some kind of type of organic matter that the carbon will penetrate the outside of it.
Do you remember what you used for this one? Did you
Oak
use like
leaves.
oak leaves? Okay, because I've seen people use pine needles and things
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
we
as
have a lot of oak trees and sometimes
trees.
horse manure,
Yeah.
dry horse
Yeah,
manure.
I see that. Now I've heard that was done also from the tribes up around the southeast
Yeah.
and southwest areas. They would use things of that nature. You talked a little about inspiration from the Southeastern designs. Anything else that inspired you from just life?
Reading, research, and art shows. Once I go to a Native American art show, like I just got back from Santa Fe a few weeks ago, it makes you feel, I don't know, it puts you in your place. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Because there's so much beautiful Native American artwork and so many talented artists. It inspires me to do a better job myself.
Yeah.
And I think that every artist probably feels that way.
Every artist does it. And do you have the same type of thing where every artist says, I could have done this better, I could have done that better? Because I've always talked to some other artists says, oh, I love your piece. And the first thing they start saying is, well, this is wrong, and that's wrong, and this is wrong.
Well, I think for me, every piece I make is pretty unique because there's so many thousands of ideas out there and all of the shell carving designs, maybe reading James Mooney about, some of the myths and the stories about the Cherokee people. So I like to look at pictures, but sometimes you can actually read a book and get truly inspired by all of our stories. Okay. They're awesome.
All right, wonderful. Do you have any kind of suggestions for aspiring young potter out there, just getting started out?
Well, I have 4 granddaughters, ages 8 to 13. So I was just talking to one of the other artists today that I want them to be able to be exposed to all the different art mediums. And so if they do choose one day to be a potter, I would be thrilled. But if they don't go down that pathway, at least I have exposed them to identifying with our culture and our Native American artwork. And then maybe they'll be a painter. They all like to draw. They like to draw, they like to play in the clay. So they're awesome girls. Of course, I'm their grandmother. But yes, in fact, I love for them to come to art shows, so I'm ready for the pandemic to be over.
Yes, I think we all are. We'd like to go back to where we all could come in person and look at these beautiful pieces of artwork. Well, Crystal, I appreciate this. It's a gorgeous piece. I'm going to turn it back over to the Feather.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So, of course, again, we're going to be looking at a variety of different pieces. Our first piece here is Birdman Warrior by Harry Osawy, and he took one of the Judges' Choice Awards. This is in the sculpture category, and as you can see, it kind of blends some different techniques. But then we also have our diverse arts category. This piece is the Sycamore Bowl and Ladle by Cynthia Dotson. It took second place in our diverse arts category. But again, we're really seeing how a lot of these different techniques get blended. She has gourd work here. She's definitely done some carving on that, along with some different paint work. But it's even got some pine needle basketry around the top of it to even add more emphasis. So it's always really interesting to get to see how our artists view things and how they start blending some of our different art mediums, especially those traditional art mediums. The Cherokee Holiday Art Show, anyone who is a member of a federally recognized tribe can enter. So we don't just see Cherokee artwork throughout our show. We see artwork from all of the different federally recognized tribes that are represented in this show. This is actually one of these sculpture pieces by Stanley Charging. It's religion, and it is a pipe. It took first place in our diverse arts category. Sometimes we have artists who enter into a category, and but their artwork actually overlaps a couple of different categories. So this was one that when he had first entered, had thought about entering it as sculpture, but later on had moved it into the diverse arts because it really does kind of overlap and can be used for either one. And again, just a great way of showing that blending of mediums. We have some of our different 2D artwork up here on the wall. This is another diverse artworks piece, so just kind of showing that and it's not all quite the same. This is a piece that's been done by Maddie Sanders. And it's actually done by attaching beads, seed beads, onto canvas, and then the canvas has also been painted. So a lot of time, a lot of detail goes into that, and we will see more of that with our Best of Show piece a little later on. We're seeing a variety of different types of art. We have some of our drawings and graphics here, and of course in drawings and graphics, we can see anything from pencil to pen, and some of this is even done on the computer. We're seeing several different drawing and graphics pieces through here. We have one by Jeff Edwards, which is the trickster. Of course, he's done a rabbit, or G-Stew as we call him in Cherokee, and G-Stew is known as being the trickster. He was our messenger for Cherokees, but he's also known for always kind of turning around, getting into mischief, getting into a lot of different trouble. And so that's something that Jeff Edwards has tried to pull through in this art piece here. We're also seeing some of our different paintings, more drawings and graphics, and then we have some photography. Our photography, of course, is its own category, and in photography, it's supposed to be untouched artwork. So it's literally that this artist has gone, they've taken their camera, set up their shot, taken that shot, but that they haven't gone through and done any sort of Photoshop afterwards, haven't done any sort of filters. It's just supposed to be a truly untouched shot. And so it's always really exciting to see what everybody comes up with within our photography. We've also got some more of our 3D pieces here. This is our second place piece in pottery. This is by Richard Graham, and it is Morning Chores. And you can see that he's used the clay here to make this beautiful pot, but has also done some carving work on the front of that. We see some pottery or some clay again used in one of our jewelry pieces. Here we've actually blended copper and clay. She's made the clay beads and then added in copper. Copper is really considered sort of our traditional metal. It was the metal that we were able to find in the southeast where Cherokees originally come from. So we see a lot of copper in our artwork, and it's always something that we see a lot of in our jewelry as well. We have a small sculpture here, so sculptures can really range anywhere from size. This is a piece called Painted Fields by Ray Mccoy. It is a small hummingbird, and again, a variety of mediums are used in this sculpture. Karen Berry has the Firebringer gourd. Verna Bates has done I Love Purple with the earrings, which are actually made from wampum, which is another traditional material that we use, which is made out of shells or quahog shells. And then Shanista Cloud, the Birthplace of the River, which is a clay bead necklace, took honorable mention in our jewelry category. Now over here on the wall behind us is a piece in our textiles and weaving, and this piece is Every Child Matters in Memory, and this is by Heda Star Robideau Morales. And this is actually to represent the children who were found, or the remains of the children that were found at the residential school in Canada. A lot of times when we go through and we see some of our different artwork added each year, we will see themes, things that are important within the Native American community, and even things that are important for the community at large. This is one of two pieces that we know that were added this year in memory of the children that were found within the residential schools. So sometimes it's kind of a tough topic, but it's also nice to get to see that those children are represented and that they're mattering, even here at our Cherokee National Holiday Art Show. All right, Robert, we'll take it back to you.
Thank you, Feather. Now we're over here with this wonderful textile piece, Weaver, and we have our Weaver here as well. Would you be so kind as to tell everybody your name and where you're from?
I am Kathy Abercrombie, and I'm from Jay.
Right. Is this the only type of artwork you do, is the weaving and the textiles?
No, if it's a textile, I'll play with it. I sew, knit, crochet. I do living history, so weaving is my favorite. That's what I do the most.
So this is your passion?
Yeah, this is my passion. The rest are just things to play.
Oh, what about the coverage you're wearing? Did you make that?
I made this last night.
Wonderful.
Just, to have something fun to wear today. And I've designed clothes and sewn my whole life, but after doing this, I have a real respect for the people that make ribbon skirts. They're a lot harder than they look.
And how did you get started?
Sewing, my mom had a sewing machine, but she didn't really sew, and she just kind of turned me loose on it. I made my first wearable dress when I was 8. And I've just designed clothes and made them ever since.
Did your mother do textiles or works, or just?
No, this was my grandmother. In the 1930s, Cherokee Nation set up some weaving halls throughout northeast Oklahoma. And my grandmother, Pearl Abercrombie, was one of the original weavers. But her and my grandpa and all 9 of their kids actually lived in the community building as caretakers where all the looms were. There were 7 looms there. So, you know, I grew up in a weaving hall, basically. So that's where I learned to weave when I was 8 years old there, too.
All right. And I noticed this, is this carded wool? Did you card this yourself?
No, that is merino wool. And that is merino is to me the softest, most lush wool you can use.
It is soft.
Yeah, it's really
keep touching
soft.
this.
I know.
keep touching it.
That's why I named this Soft Diamonds, because it is so soft.
And the dyes, is that from,
No, those are commercial
Commercial dyes
dyes.
as
Those are
well?
commercial dyes.
have you dyed your own pieces before?
I haven't, and people keep asking me if I spin, and I just have said I don't have the patience, but I do have a spinning wheel now, so I plan to start spinning my own wheel. I'm just afraid when I do, I'm going to want like an alpaca in the
Yes,
backyard.
yeah, then you have animals in the back, yeah.
So, but no, this is commercial wool, but Oak Hill, they started with using Navajo wool when they first started out. Then they went to commercial wool. And in the late 50s, early 60s, they went to Orlon and acrylics. You know, they're much less expensive, they're bright, they're easy to weave with. And but I have a letter from the buyer that's to my grandmother, and it says, well, Miss Abercrombie, I understand that you still want to weave with wool, but no one will pay $38 for a blanket. So, you know, and I wove with acrylic my whole life until, you know, maybe 20 years ago. And I thought, I wear natural fibers all the time. I wear cotton and silk and linen. So I went back to weaving with natural fibers. And that's kind of what I specialize in, is all natural.
Now this looks like this comes from a large loom. Do you have a large loom to work from?
I have large looms. They're massive looms. They are the original looms from Oak Hill. They were made at the Sequoia School. The shop kids made them. They're big, 6-foot, massive oak and iron. You know, it takes 4 people to move them, or my 3 sons. They should have 4.
It's about the size of a small car.
It is. It's the size of a full-size bed, actually. So I have 2 of them. I have grandmothers and my aunts, and that's what I weave on. And the diamond weave was kind of what Granny did all the time. That's what she was known for, and that's my favorite. Also, her brand, her family ranch brand, was a diamond, so that's kind of special to me.
So the inspiration of the diamond's grandmother relates to all your cultural history.
And the way I design is, you know, the first thing I do is just get my yarns out and play with colors. To me, this made me think of like a bright winter sky. And then when I saw the brown, it reminded me of hot cocoa. You know,
So you need hot
it's,
cocoa,
you
winter
know,
sky.
snuggle up with this, and it's soft diamonds, just wrap up in that.
Curl
yeah.
up in a blanket and a fire off to the
Yeah,
side.
with some
That's all
cocoa,
you need.
yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
And you had black diamond for your title for your piece. I was looking at this, and I've seen people weave before and do all the carding as well. And another question: how long did it take to thread each
How
one
long
of them?
does it
People seem to
take?
not understand. They look at this, they think, "Oh, that's a beautiful design." They don't
Yeah.
realize the
Oh,
amount
you
of
can
work.
weave. Yeah, you can weave that
put
in a
into
few
this.
hours. I don't know how many hours I have in this, but when I used to make blankets all the time, I had it down to where I could make a blanket in 11 hours. But it also takes 11 hours to thread the loom. And then since I work with wool, once I'm through weaving it, then I have to wet finish, and that is soaking and
Yes.
fulling and, you know, and steaming, and so that takes several more hours. So it takes a long time.
So people just do not realize the amount of work it goes into just to make one piece.
Well, we were talking about her beautiful pottery,
pottery, yes.
that it's so when you get to the end and then you fire it, you know, you worry about it cracking. And it's the same way working with wool. You can make something, it looks great, but if you mess up the wet finishing, you know, you can shrink it and marine it, and it's just done. And I've done that.
Oh, that's right up there with a friend of mine who does a flint knapping. He'll be sitting there working on his arrow spear point, and he'll hit one spot,
Yeah,
crack
it's
it
gone.
across.
It's gone. All that work, it's gone.
What type of advice would you give for a young weaver out there?
Well, you know, I'm the 3rd generation from Oak Hill, and all 3 of my boys weave. They're the 4th generation, and last year I got to teach my grandkids. who are 8 and 6, and they're the 5th generation to not only weave for our family, but to weave on these same looms. So, you know, I tell kids, just jump on the looms and play. When I take them and demonstrate, adults don't want to touch the looms. I take small looms when I do living history. A lot of times the men will stand back there and want to know the mechanics of it. But
they'll stand like this.
Yeah, how's that do that, you know? But man, little kids, if I can get them on a loom, they'll just take off and start weaving. And you know, that's how Granny that's how we learned.
Yes.
Just turn us loose.
It's a beautiful piece of artwork.
Thank
you,
you.
Kathy, so much.
Whatever.
All right, we're going to turn you back over to Feathersmith.
Here we have our second place piece in our paintings category. This is Voices from the Past by Dan Timmons. He's got a variety of different birds in here, all kinds of different bird species. As a biologist, I really like to look at pieces like this and get to identify some of the birds in the pieces. Next, we'll kind of actually sing again. We're going through a variety of different categories. We have some of our photography down through here, our paintings. We've got some paintings that are actually done to look like weavings. We've got more photography. And then behind us over here on our table, we've got a lot of jewelry pieces. So they have some gorgets that have been made, some clay bead necklaces. Here's a clay bead necklace by Rex Smith, which I believe will be an artist we'll be seeing shortly. We have some more gorgets. Our first place in jewelry was a piece by Tony Chaliwa. It is the piece is titled Portals. It's a copper cuff. He also took our Chief's Choice, which is through his other piece, Blue Horn and Red Horn by Tony Chaliwa. We have the second place in jewelry, which was by Finger Woven Cuff Bracelet by Karen Berry. And then our next piece is our Deputy Chief's Choice piece. It went to Stephen Morales for One Jodi, the medallion, One Jodi medallion. As you can see, he's actually got a piece here that's done for stickball. And I have Stephen Morales here with me today. Stephen is going to actually come up and talk to us a little bit about his artwork. He has been entering in the Trail of Tears, excuse me, not the Trail of Tears. He's been entering in the Cherokee National Holiday Art Show for several years. He does a lot of different jewelry work. And so, Osio, Stephen, how are you today?
Osio, Heather, how are you doing?
So, Stephen, do you have anything to tell us about your piece here?
Well, yeah, this piece is entitled One Jodi medallion, and the idea behind this piece is trying to introduce more of our southeastern designs into Indian country. You know, throughout, from what I've seen in Indian jewelry, we see a lot of the Southwest style. And so I want to try and put our Southeastern Cherokee style jewelry on a map so when people can see our work throughout the U.S., they can say, hey, that's not Southwest, that's Southeast. And so that's what a lot of this was focusing on, was trying to introduce symbols and designs that we all know that would be familiar to us.
That's exciting, especially one of the things I always look forward to every Cherokee holiday is looking for Native American jewelry, and it can be so difficult to find Southeastern designs, so it's always really exciting to get to actually find some Southeastern jewelry. Stephen, how did you get involved in working in jewelry?
Well, you know, that's a long story, but I was wounded in the Middle East in Iraq in 2006, and so whenever I got out of the service, I didn't know how to do much as a civilian. And so the VA, Recreational Art Therapy, they saved my life, and they taught me what was lapidary at the time. Lapidary is stoneworking. And when I got blown up, I didn't know how to do a lot, and so that reinstilled the value that I lost from that blast. And they taught me how to do that, and then when I started making my jewelry, it wasn't really art or anything for me or a way to make a means, it was medicine, you know, and so this right here was medicine to help me heal. And so I started doing jewelry after being taught by a World War II veteran, Mr. Andy Anderson, at a VA hospital, and he taught me how to refocus my mind off of the bad stuff and put it on something a little bit more productive. And that's what I started doing. And when I do it, I'm sorry, I get all, but when I do it, it's just medicine for me. You know, it's just a way for me to relax and forget stuff.
It's good medicine.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service, Stephen. Do you do any other types of artwork, or have you always been doing jewelry?
Well, I started off doing baskets. My family, my mom, Shirley Butter, and Betty Fogg, a lot of them were known basket weavers. And they taught me how to do the double wall baskets, and for a while I did that. And then I just wanted to change to a different medium, and I started doing jewelry. But aside from that, I'll draw a little bit, but my sketches are really just more stories than they are for art. I don't really enter my drawings. It's just more so just for personal stuff, just my jewelry.
Oh, I understand that. For oftentimes what we see with a lot of artists is that they work in a lot of different mediums, but they tend to enter some of the same mediums in the art shows and things. Some of those things are just kind of help us feel a little bit better, and then some of those other mediums we like to share with other people. Do you have any suggestions for any up-and-coming artists?
Stay creative and don't give up. And the big thing is whenever you're doing art, there's no right way of art. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. You know, art is individual, and art is based on individual medicine to that person and how they perceive it. So whenever you look at paintings and you look at pictures, and some of them you're like, oh man, each person can get a different idea and a different thought from just one image. That's why this art is medicine, because how it can heal you in one way, Heather or Feather, it can heal me, it can heal him, it can heal other people, because how we perceive it differently. And that's what the big thing is, to tell people when you look at art, look at it for all of its purposes, not just the beauty it represents, but the purpose that it can heal you too if you look at it in a different aspect.
Well, Stephen, thank you for being here with us today. You have a beautiful piece here, and congratulations on your Deputy Chief's Choice Award.
I appreciate y'all. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the committee, and especially Deputy Warner for that. I appreciate it. It came completely by surprise. I'm humbled and honored. So, Wadon to God, thank you.
Wadon. All right. I think we will turn it back over to you, Robert.
Thank you, Feather. We're now with the artwork with the best in show today here. All right. Tell us your name and tell us where you're from.
My name is Andrea Tidwell, and I'm from Stillwell, Oklahoma.
Stillwell, Oklahoma. Now,
born and raised.
Okay. What type of artwork do you do? Is it primarily this type of beadwork?
Beadwork. Yeah. Well, I do like oil paintings and sculptures, and there was just always something going on in our house.
So your mom was your primary influence, the beadwork and the painting.
To this day.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
And she's the one who got you started?
Yes, I started, it was like a family affair. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and she started us all young, and we all know how to bead. And like I said, it was a family affair. I think I made my first beaded medallion when I was about 8.
Oh, wonderful.
So almost 40 years of beading.
That's great. That's wonderful. Now, because you talked a little bit about your family and your sisters and everybody else working there, I have 3 brothers, and everybody could draw, but I don't want to just keep on going with it.
Yeah.
And you're not be the same with you. You just still want to create the beads.
Basically, yeah.
So what inspired you to create this piece?
Well, I get a lot of inspiration when I'm trying to sleep, and my mind just goes and goes and goes, and it's hard to shut it off. And I had just pictured the image in my head, and I had to jump back up and run into my work table, and I sketched it out really quick before I forgot it. A lot of things come to me just in my in my mind, the image, and I try to capture that before it goes away, because sometimes it'll go away pretty quickly.
It's bad if you're driving a car, and then you can't think about it.
Yeah, right. But mostly it's at night whenever I'm trying to sleep. Or whenever I'm walking in the morning, I'll get a lot of inspiration too.
I had
So.
a friend of mine who did that. They got inspiration, but they just remembered to just leave a sketchbook right by the bedside so that they
yeah.
woke up in the middle of the night real quick.
Yeah, because I mean, my mind goes and goes and goes, and sometimes I'll forget, so it's better to do that.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the picture. We have the turtle. It's the Turtle Island.
Turtle
Yes,
Island, yeah. Because of the continent, the Native Americans or indigenous believe that it's shaped like a turtle. And so the skyline, the city skyline, well, I just think whatever's going on bad in the world, beyond the city skyline, the heart here of Turtle Island, the Native people were here at peace, and the fire, it just represents, the keeping the fire burning of culture and tradition, within our people.
Yeah.
And did the elderly, to honor the elderly, and to respect the children and the women. And the new moon is significant, because of renewal. And what I really like is for people to have their own takeaway of it. But for me, just examples, the Cherokee flower, and there's 7 of them for the 7 clans. And let's see, the more you look at it, the more things that you come up with. Yeah. I've
looked at some of they've got 4 little diamond patterns like for 4 different directions of the earth.
Yeah.
Fire is sacred to us. It's like a living being to Cherokees. It's a sacred being. And you have like nature, we have the wonderful aspects of the trees in the background.
And the moon and the sun on his head, kind of like a compass.
Yes.
Or kind of like navigating,
Guiding
it's going to be daytime, I'm going to turn this way, or, and and then the tribal design on his little arms. I don't know what they're called.
And the title of your piece?
We the People, Life on Turtle Island.
Turtle Island.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful example of this. And it's beadwork. How long? Because it's beadwork. It's not a painting. It's not watercolor. It's beadwork. It's beadwork.
Yeah, there were some places that each bead was put on one at a time. A total of 2 years, I know. It was way more than I wanted it to be, but I'm a full-time artist, so I do a lot of custom order beadwork and daily.
Yes.
So I would work this in between that. So, yeah, and also I wanted to point out the colors of the sky, like the Indian summer, this time of the year whenever we get those awesome, sunsets, and I tried to capture that as well.
Yeah. What size beads? What number are they?
Well, some of them, there's some size 12 and 13 cuts in there. There are size 10 and 11s. And I think one of the shells, when I did the shell shakers, I think those were like maybe 8 or 9, size 9, just to make sure I had put that in there,
Wonderful.
Probably a million beads.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
It felt like it when I was finished. Right. The last stitch on that, that felt great.
But you're so glad. I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm finished. It's like.
But it's my masterpiece, and it is an absolute honor to get Best in Show.
Best in Show.
And Speaker's Choice. And I just want to say thank you to Cherokee Nation, for giving us an outlet, to show our work.
Yes.
And it's appreciated.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the artists here. And we're grateful to have you here.
Well, thank you. It's an absolute honor to be here and to represent my mom. She's been passed away for almost 5 years, and she was a Cherokee beadwork artist, Mary Andrea Tidwell. And it's just an absolute honor, and you don't even know how happy and thankful I am. It just blew my mind.
Wonderful. Well, it's an inspiration.
Thank you.
Do you have any kind of advice for any young person out there, maybe at beadwork watching?
If you can dream it in here, then you can do it. And there are no rules to beading. There are no mistakes, and if you think you did, just cover it up with something. But no, you just keep on keeping on. There's a lot of burning the candle at both ends if you're really going to get into it, and a lot of burning the midnight oil, and a lot of time, and you got to be passionate and pretty much dedicate yourself to it.
All right. Well,
So you got to just be prepared for that if you want to do, full-time or whatever,
Well,
yeah.
that's a wonderful piece.
Thank you very
Andrea,
much.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Wado.
Thank you all. We're going to turn it back over to Feathersmith.
Well, don't. Thank you for spending the last hour with us at the 16th Annual Cherokee Holiday Art Show. We've gotten to talk to several artists whom we are so grateful for showing up and interviewing with us today. Robert and I are very thankful for having you all here. We've seen 12 different categories, 115 pieces here at the art show this year, and we've had a chance to get to talk about something that we're all incredibly passionate about, which is artwork, Native American artwork, and especially Cherokee Nation artwork. Thank you all again for being here, and we hope that we'll see you again next year for our next Cherokee National Holiday. Wadon.